It is the longest one in the world. More than 1,000 years ago, another great city thrived on water brought in by these marvels of engineering. The magnificent structures that survive to this day have become icons for the brilliance of the Roman Empire, and not surprisingly. They carried millions of gallons of water from the mountains 50 miles away, a feat no civilization had ever attempted before. Once it reached the city, water was distributed through a grid of supply lines under the streets. What made it all possible was a material that was to give plumbing its name, lead. The Latin plumbus means lead, and the first Roman plumbers were artisans who fashioned sheet lead into everything from basket frames to the miles of lead pipe that supplied water to the hundreds of fountains, public buildings, and private homes throughout the empire. But perhaps most importantly, this running water was the lifeblood of one of Rome's most treasured institutions, the baths.
I think the most interesting thing about Roman baths is, in fact, they were a kind of Disneyland for the average Roman. And that was true because of the extraordinary abundance of water in all of these various bath rooms and bathing chambers, but also because they were very elaborately decorated. A scholar who recently wrote about the baths of Caracalla has said that this was a means for giving the common people the chance to live the lives of the rich and famous. The emperors themselves used these baths as a means of giving the people a kind of a wonderful entertainment facility, which would prevent them from thinking of other things like political freedom, for example.
Beneath the splendor of the baths was a marvel of engineering. Millions of gallons of water flowed in and out of the complexes, heated by wood and coal-fired furnaces to precise temperatures, providing an array of choices for the bather. There were separate steam rooms and radiant heating throughout, accomplished by pumping hot air through channels beneath the floors. Wastewater drained out of the buildings and into large sewer pipes that emptied into the Tiber River. The largest of these sewers, the Cloaca Maxima, predated the first aqueduct by a half-century and is still used today as a storm drain. In fact, its original purpose was just that.
The sewer system that ran under Rome was basically to take away the rainwater. It was only an afterthought that people thought, well, as long as that water's going by, we might as well throw our stuff into it. And so they did their business into the system.
And doing their business was often a social event. Public latrines had as many as 20 seats arranged in a circle. Water ran constantly beneath the seats, washing the waste into the nearest sewer. When the Roman legions set out to conquer the world, they brought their plumbing with them. The baths of Aquae Sulis were built by the Emperor Claudius in the 1st century AD on the site of a natural hot springs. They were restored in the 16th century, and today they're a popular tourist attraction in what is now the English town of Bath. Water still flows through the original stone channels into the 80 by 40 foot Great Bath, a kind of scaled down version of the ones back home in Rome. And after nearly 2,000 years, they're a testament to the durability of Roman engineering. As it turns out, the empire itself was not so durable. When it finally fell, so too did the state-of-the-art of plumbing.
For one thing, Rome was conquered not by a new civilization that surpassed it, but by a bunch of barbarian hordes who were basically nomads and plunderers. And they didn't really give two hoots about running water. They were never in one place long enough to enjoy indoor plumbing. Christianity started spreading throughout the Western world, and the early Christians were not big fans of bathing, and I think one of the reasons is that, as I think everybody knows, they were rather poorly treated by the Romans, and thus they tended to reject Roman culture, and I think they threw out the proverbial baby with the bathwater.
With people crowded into cities during the Middle Ages, the unsanitary conditions brought consequences that were nothing less than deadly. Throughout what has been aptly named the Dark Ages, entire populations suffered some of the worst health consequences in history. thousands upon thousands lost their lives to waterborne diseases, the nature of which wouldn't be understood for centuries to come. Typhoid, typhus, cholera, dysentery. The resulting conditions spawned the infamous Black Plague, which was spread by rats and insects and killed an estimated 1/3 of Europe's population. Unaware that they were being poisoned by their own filth, people attributed their terrible misfortune to the wrath of God. The traces of plumbing and sanitary practices that did exist during the Middle Ages were in monasteries and in the castles of feudal lords, where garderobes served as indoor privies.
The garderobe was a projection from a building which inside contained a seat on which you sat and simply went straight down into the moat or the river or the ground below. And there are several surviving ones in England. And miserable menials would come and scrape away the dirt in the morning in grand establishments.
So the invaders, you know, if your castle was under siege, everybody would go a lot, and you'd see this, and the one thing you didn't want to do was go through that moat.
With the Renaissance came a renewed interest in hygiene, and so began the steady march toward indoor plumbing. The first step was to bring water into the home by hand.
Almost every home throughout the land had a washstand in the bedroom, which, if they were lucky enough, a maid would bring up with a jug of hot water and a jug of cold water, and then there'd be the bowls. And they'd always be there in matching china, and ravishingly beautiful examples still survive to this day of these wash hand stand sets.
Chamber pots of every description made up in form what they lacked in function. And emptying them was simple enough. Open the window and toss the contents onto the street. This practice gave rise to the popular nickname given the modern toilet in Britain. The proper etiquette for emptying one's chamber pot was to warn passers-by with the French phrase "gardez l'eau," meaning look out for the water. This was anglicized to become gardez-l'eau, hence the time-honored term loo. For the origin of the popular nickname John, historians look to none other than the Queen of England.
Queen Elizabeth I had a bath once a month, whether she needed it or no. John Harrington was her godson, and he invented apparatus, a machine, a water closet with proper flushing mechanism in 1596. And the Queen also had one made for her, but she was too frightened to use it. She said it sounded like a thunderstorm, and with these terrifying rushes of water.
Ridiculed by his peers, Harrington produced only 2 of the toilets. 170 years would pass before his invention would resurface. What could be more simple than a tub for bathing? Before indoor plumbing, bathtubs were simply filled and emptied by hand. It was from this elementary idea that modern baths and showers evolved, but not without some colorful experiments along the way. The concept of the shower began in ancient times with waterfalls and buckets of water, but by the mid-19th century, some intriguing designs were in the works. One of the earliest was the English Regency shower, which pumped the same water continually from the drain to a cistern over the bather's head. The American Virginia stool shower was a seated affair with a hand-operated pump and backbrush. There were numerous variations, including this self-pumping shower, which combined a cleanup with a vigorous workout. What few may realize